Bill is the chairman of the Select Committee on Agriculture, so I'd like to hear his perspectives on where the beef industry is at.
Thanks very much. Bloody good job I didn't bring a razor blade. I think I'd have slashed my wrist by now. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a great privilege to be here, and what a fantastic setup. But can I say, to summarise, and Julian has given evidence to the Select Committee on Agriculture, which I chair, which is looking at how we produce food in the future that's affordable to the consumer, and does that mean redefining what affordable is, you know, get rid of the second TV and the proposition that what's in the fridge is going to be more important than what's in the garage in the long term, how we produce food that's affordable to the consumer, sustainable to the environment. And I have to say China's having to come to terms with that because they're destroying their environment, and viable to the farmer. I mean, people today tend to go to Woolies, Coles, Aldi's or wherever, and they just think the tucker's there and that's the end of it. You can go to Churchill's butcher shop in Woollahra in Sydney and buy steak for $70 a kilo. I have to say that there isn't one person, sadly, there's not one single solitary soul in the government, in the parliament, who lives in the bush. Not a person. We tend to take it for granted. I mean, we need to get the message to the wider constituency how and how politically. Why haven't they developed the Ord? There's 14,000 hectares developed there. There's 80,000 that could be developed because politically it doesn't count. And agriculture is considered to be a mature industry, like the advertisements in the Sydney Morning Herald. They nearly went broke because they thought that the ads would always work. And so we tend to think of agriculture as some sort of great phenomenon of the past, and we should just rest on our laurels and retire to the coast. And that's the attitude of a lot of the world. And to summarise what Julian Cribb has just said, the forecast by 2050 for the planet is that there will be about 9 billion people. 1 billion of those people will be unable to be fed. At the present time, they've just upped it to 1 billion that are short of tucker today on the planet, and there are 1 billion people who are obese and eat too much tucker, and you put that together with a 40% waste of all the food that's produced, we've got a serious problem. But by 2050, 1 billion people unable to be fed, 30% of the productive land of Asia going out of production, 2/3 of the world's population living there. I mean, that's a great asset for Australia because we're next door to the market. The food task doubling, and the bit that no one's taken any notice of, and Julian did refer to it, by 2050, Mick Kelty, he was the Australian Federal Police Commissioner until a while ago, he actually said it one day and no one took much notice of him. The greatest threat to Australia's sovereignty, he said, is what he described as climate change, and I don't want to get into an argument of whether it's a 50-year change or a 50,000-year change. All I need to know is we need to have a bloody plan to deal with it because the weather is changing. He said the greatest threat was climate change. What he was referring to in protecting our sovereignty was human displacement. And to summarise that, if the science is only 10% right and there's only 160 million people on the planet displaced, I'm bloody sure the United Nations won't deal with that because they are the largest, most corrupt body on the planet. So we've got to look after our own, and we've just heard about the world's problems, and they are serious, and they will have a serious effect on Australia's future. But God looks after those who look after themselves, and the one thing that we need to do in Australia is get the mob, that's you, to motivate the politicians, because most politicians are generally pretty gutless. They're worried about the next election, but not worried about where we're going to be in 40 or 50 years' time. Well, I say it's time we had a plan to work out where we're going to be in 40 or 50 years' time. And by 2070, as Julian said, there could be 1/3 of the population of China unable to be fed from its own resources, and that would be the equivalent of 20 times the Australian population. They're looking for somewhere else to feed them. Now, they do have a policy at the present time that that says we should get on the march around the world and look for other places to grow tucker to secure our food task, because the destiny of a sovereign nation in the future won't be the size of the cannon or the fastest rocket. It'll be your water and food supply will be more important. And I have to say, we are in a fortunate position in Australia. So we can secure our future and then, with what's left over, attend to some of the rest of the world's problems. And the science is saying that Australia's going to dry out in the south and it's going to get more event-based weather, but there will be new opportunities in the north. And now no one gives a rat's about the north because it's either too hot or too humid or too far away. And I've had people in Sydney say to me, why would we want to develop the conjunction of the Margaret River and the Fitzroy River? It's too far away from the market. I said, bullshit. I said, the only thing wrong with you is you're looking the wrong way. Turn around, the market's the other way. 2/3 of the world's population's behind your back. But no, we don't want to do that because there's no votes in it. I mean, we've had this ridiculous argument in West Australia where they've had a ban on GM technology. I have to say we're now overseeing, the lawyers and the bankers are overseeing the patenting of gene patents for plants. The genes in plants that give plants the capacity to be salt tolerant or moisture tolerant, drought tolerant. And we're allowing Monsanto and people like that to tie up the genes so they tie up the seed supply. And that shouldn't be allowed to happen. Patents are about inventions, not discoveries. They didn't patent the moon when they discovered the moon, and they shouldn't be able to do that, and the same applies, of course, to human patents, genes and patenting of those, and the cost of general medicine. That's getting off the subject. So there are a lot of issues, and we do need to have a plan. And the committee that I represent, which the Greens have told us they're going to shut me down on the 23rd of August, was to look out a long-term plan for Australia. But as I say, no one seems to care. In the Senate, every person in the Senate on the government side, that is the Labor side at the present time, is either a trade union official or a Labor Party apparatchik. And the only exception to that rule in the last few years, there was one senator, I better not say from which state, who got there as part of a divorce settlement. So that's what you're up against. It's trade union heaven, the Senate. And as long as they get the next travel, what do they call them, study tour, to go to Italy and study the statues or something, they're happy. And we take it for granted. I mean, I guess the beef industry, we're here to talk about the beef industry, the imposition of the bureaucratic view of life on things like AQUIS and biosecurity, driven by world trade considerations, driven by a whole lot of people who trip around the world having tea with one another, thinking about what a great thing it is. And I have to say the BSE proposition, and not many people understand the deadliness of the BSE prion when it transfers to the human variant. But I had and we've sort of won the first step in that battle, but we haven't won the battle by a long way. Because we've got to come to terms with the fact that what that was really all about was the trade organisations of Canada and the United States trying to equalise us, bring us down to their level in our clean, green and free status, so they weren't disadvantaged in Korea and Japan every time they had a reactor. And we were stupid enough to think it was a good idea, and some of our representative bodies thought that was a good idea. Well, the prion that's behind mad cow disease, BSE, and the human variant, you can't sterilise it. And we don't appreciate the fact that we haven't got BSE in Australia, but we should. I had a person ring me the other day from Perth who had gone to the dentist and was honest enough when you fill out the form,